right, so whether you are a longtime user of AllSight or you're just here to learn about it for the first time, we have gathered a lot of unique ideas for using the product to talk about today. So everyone should walk away with something new, something valuable that you haven't heard before. Number 10, right size hardware spending. For new customers, this is usually the place where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck right as you get going right out of the box. Our usage tracking is very robust, and we're going to start tracking logins on your hardware without any kind of configuration. So I've got a kind of a quick look at some real numbers just to kind of give an example of the kind of savings you might be able to get using our product to figure out how to more efficiently distribute hardware, assist with making buying decisions. And one of the things I'm going to do is just kind of show you some numbers. So this is a campus map for university. It's one of our customers. They've had the product for, I think, about 3 years now. And you can see the starting point here for their lab locations on one of their campuses, including the number of computers listed here in each location. And then this was their secondary campus. So they had a smaller campus with 3 computer labs. I want to say, I think it was somewhere around 800 or so computers starting out. So after some number of months of tracking the data, tracking logins with the product, they ran this histogram report. And just as one example of one of their labs here, you can see the blue line at the top represents the number of computers in that location. And then you can see what the usage looks like. So in one of their labs, they've got not even half of their computers in use at peak time. And these are some of their numbers. So they measured and tracked usage throughout 2021, I believe it was. And then last year, they were able to identify 300 fewer computers that they could purchase during the next renewal. They did some shifting around of some hardware just based on the popularity of certain locations, and they were able to identify $600,000 worth of hardware that they didn't have to buy based on just looking at the way the collaborative learning environments and labs were actually being used. And what I wanted to do, if we can, is just take a quick look at a couple of reports that can be helpful for getting this kind of data. So first of all, this histogram logins div report is the one we were just looking at from their data. And that's going to be by far the best report to identify the specific computer locations where you might be able to reduce the amount of hardware that you've got there. But I wanted to point out one thing here. Under the Options tab, there is a setting that's called Include Idle Events and Login History. You can think of that, basically what that means is to treat idle time as if the user logged out. So by default, we're just looking at total login time, the time between a login and a log out. With this setting turned on, we're going to exclude the time where the computer was idle and treat it as if it was a logout. Another setting you might consider, just depending on if you've had computers move around from lab to lab or done a hardware refresh at some point during the date range of the report, is this use division from usage event. Basically, your computer locations or divisions are treated as just folders with computers in them by default. With this option turned on, instead of just grabbing the computers in that division today and running the report on that date range for that selection, this is going to actually scan the login data and pull out events that occurred in each division, even if the computers are no longer there. So this is an important setting to know about. I'm going to run this now just to give you another look at what this report looks like on our demo data. So just really quickly, we see our computer divisions. And if I select one, I can see, again, the blue line at the top is the total number of computers in that room. and then we see the peaks and valleys over the time range of the report. I just ran this on 30 days. So start there when it comes to hardware optimization. And so number 9 is to get rid of redundant tools. There's 2 ways of doing this. This is something that we hear fairly often, is that different departments, different users throughout an organization might have preferences for different tools, or if you've got different users or different administrators buying different software products around the environment, the ability to run audit and usage reports to show you various products that all do the same thing and how you can standardize around one and share that version or that product with a larger user group in order to take advantage of licensing multiple copies and not buying smaller numbers of many different types of products. There's a report and some settings that I want to show you that help you really kind of zoom in on exactly this kind of thing. And we'll go ahead and do that now. So I'm going to jump into the key configure. So there are a few things that you can still only do in key configure. And one of the settings that I want to show you, or options that I want to show you for this particular report, can only be done in key configure today. So what we're going to look at is the audit products prod cross div report right now. You might also do this as the prod cross comp if you're going to run it on a specific location at a time, or if you're just looking at a few computers. But we're going to look at this at the computer division level at this point. And what I want to show you is that if we look at the columns tab here, I've added the category column from down below into this report. If we were to run this in the web, we're only going to see the standard columns, but here in key configure, you can add columns from other tables within the database sometimes. And this category report is going to be really helpful for us to group together like products so that you can sort by that and see. The other thing I'm going to do is, it's not already there. Actually, no. I'm going to run this report as it is, and we'll have a quick look at this, and then I want to talk about one other report that can kind of give you similar information that might, in your circumstance, might be a little bit better. So this is an audit report. This is really there to show you where software is installed. I ran prod cross div, but by adding this category column and sorting by it, I can now scroll through and look for products that have similar functions. And when I find that there are multiple products that do the same sort of thing, I can then take that information, do a little bit of research, run some usage reports, and see which one is most popular, and hopefully find ways to kind of choose one and make sure everybody's using the same products. So do a little bit of standardization there. The other one that's very similar to this I wanted to show you is a usage report. So I'll go ahead and do the same because we want to add that category column. So if I come in and we go down to usage and we look at usage prod cross div, there's one main reason why this might be helpful. So I've already added the category option, and the other thing I want to do is include installed products with no usage, just so you can see where those things are, even if they've not been used at all. And then I selected this family products only option, especially for new customers or customers that have transitioned to tracking usage at the family level. The benefit of using this usage report is, rather than seeing each individual version of a specific software product, so Office 365, Office 2019, and various versions and suite levels of Microsoft Office, in general, what this report is going to allow you to do is just display the family products. The data on this particular server is rather old, and it comes from a time prior to family products even existing. So this isn't a good example in terms of showing you here on this webinar that if you were to run this report on your server, especially if you implemented within the last few years since family products were introduced, you're not going to see kind of the mess here with all these different versions. You'll just see the main definitions that are the product families. But again, you can group them by category. Another idea around getting rid of redundant tools is not just in your software inventory out in your environment, but also to consider redundant tools that serve the same purpose or overlapping purposes with AllSight itself. So any kind of inventory management software that you use for managing your hardware, any kind of tools you might be using for loaner checkout or purchase tracking tools, or if you've got other tools that are used for monitoring usage or computer lab statistics. Anything like that, you might consider rolling that functionality into AllSight so that you can get rid of those redundant tools as well. So let's jump back into the slideshow here, and we'll take a look at number 8, which is software license optimization. So this kind of ties into getting rid of redundancies, but in this case, for products that you're keeping, software license optimization is all about buying what you actually need. Instead of relying on requests from users or the expectation that something's always going to be there, even if it's not going to be used, you can kind of target your resources to purchase the software that's popular, that people are really using, and get rid of licenses that are no longer needed. So a couple of reports that you might consider running for number 8. One is called product optimizations. Reports page, and we've got this one saved as a template here. I'll show you where to find it in the report builder if you don't have it, but I'm just going to run this one really quickly just to give you a quick look at what it does. And after running it, I'm going to change the view slightly to put prod object computer instead of the default view, which is prod comp object. So if I select this, what we're going to see is it resorts this. Again, this is old data, but it'll serve for our purposes here. Adobe Creative Cloud 2013 is installed on many computers throughout the environment, but in these cases, we could get away with purchasing something other than the entire suite here. So for these computers, they're only using Acrobat out of that product suite. And if we look down here below, here's a bunch of computers that have the Adobe Creative Cloud suite installed, but have only used Dreamweaver. So that's another way to kind of dial down what you're purchasing a bit more, in addition to not buying redundant software. Actually purchase or target the specific programs or applications within an overall suite if you can, to reduce spending and kind of optimize software licensing there. Another couple of reports that you might look at with this goal in mind, I'm not going to run necessarily. Actually, I wanted to show you where this product optimization report is. So let's go to the report builder. And what you can see if I select this, actually it's up here. So it is called product optimizations. Prod cross comp is the default name of that report. And then you can see our display name for our one-click template was product optimization. But that's what you'll search for. And then the other 2 reports I'm not going to run, but let me just show them to you really quickly. Actually, we just ran one of them, that usage prod cross div or usage prod cross comp is another way to identify what software is installed that is and is not being used and how much. And then if you are making use of our purchase tracking functionality, where you're entering your purchase records, you're associating those with your software product definitions, and then you're tracking usage of the given software products, there is a report called compliance. And I'll go ahead and spell that correctly first of all. I'll go ahead and run this one just to give you a quick look at what it looks like. But this is one that if you're making a full use of a lot of our features, including purchase tracking in particular, this report is going to allow you to get a view of usage as compared to what you're actually purchasing. So we can see the software products listed here, the license metric, the number of copies we're entitled to based on the details in the purchase record. And then this managed column is showing us the number of copies that we have assigned to software policies. So how many are we actually managing or assigning licenses using a policy for? And then you can see that if there is a deficit or surplus in licensing, comparing purchases to what's being used. And it will, using the purchase deployed, attempt to calculate if you're over deployed, using more than you've purchased, or perhaps under deployed and spending more than you need to because you're not using all the licenses that you've actually purchased. This consume column will show you, based on the license metric and usage, how many of the licenses you purchased are actually being used. All right. So the next one, speaking of license management and tracking, another way that you can save money, and a lot of our customers are doing this, in particular for a software product called or publisher called Bentley, that has a lot of different engineering software products, is active license management to reduce overage charges and audit risk and exposure. So I'm going to jump back into Key Configure just briefly. A lot of our newer customers that have come on board within the last few years may not be very aware of the license management functionality, even though it was our original use case for Key Server back when it was originally created. There's a lot less active license management necessary these days, because publishers, for the most part, have kind of taken over that role of license manager with cloud-based authentication or cloud-based software, and there's a lot less need these days. So in the web interface in particular, there's not a lot of references to policies or editing or managing licenses. For the most part, here in the web, you're going to come to this Manage tab and just choose whether or not you want to track usage without applying any rules. So just as a quick introduction for those customers that haven't seen it, I'm going to go into the policies window here. And we're just going to select one to open up and have a look. Any of those from the web interface where you just decided you want to track usage are going to have this yellow icon. These are observed policies that don't have any rules associated with them. But the ones with the blue icon here are policies set up to actually manage some number of licenses based on a license metric. So let's just take a quick look at that. This particular policy is a node metric, which means a device licensing. And there's 40 seats available, 40 entitlements that we've purchased. In this case, all 40 have been assigned. And I can click on that button to see the list of 40 computers that these licenses have been assigned to. And you see that relaxed enforcement has been selected. That means that we can actually block the launch of this product on computers it's not supposed to be on. If we've assigned the 40 licenses we've purchased, and we want to avoid some of that audit exposure, we can block the launch, set up notifications so that administrators are notified when the software is installed and being used on computers it's not supposed to be, and that sort of give you a heads up on things you either need to go purchase or uninstall in the case of a node license. The more traditional use case here is concurrent use. There's not as much of that going on these days, but this was the original use case of our product. And this is for licensing, where you're allowed to install it on as many computers as you want. but you're only allowed to run it on some preset number of computers, and our product in real time can manage access to that software. That's all I'll mention there for number 7. We're going to keep going here. So availability maps. This is one that was introduced a number of years ago as a way for end users in university settings to be able to locate available computers or search for software products on campus where they may need it and they need to find it. So just as a quick look at the availability maps, I'm sure if you're already a customer, for the most part, you've seen this and know what it's all about. But I just wanted to very quickly demonstrate a couple of ways you could use this, kind of specifically kind of target the idea of saving money. If not apparent, just looking at the functionality, how we might be able to help you do that with this. So first of all, if users have information, then they're going to be able to more efficiently use the resources you're providing. You'll get fewer requests for more computers in a given lab if they're able to find the software in another lab that they didn't know was there. So the ability here to come up and search for any software product, either by typing it into the search bar and filtering this view, or by coming to the software page, locating the product that you're looking for, clicking on it, and using that to filter the view. That's one way where over the course of time, users will kind of help you more evenly distribute access to the products because you're providing information on where it is and how to get to it. So the software search can help with that. Just the availability itself helps with that. Another thing that we've heard customers say is that the availability maps, as users begin to use them, help reduce crowded times or peak times in the labs, because they're able to see how busy a lab is just by looking at the map, by coming into the individual labs and looking at the demand forecast, which is based on popular times throughout the week. What ends up happening is, instead of everybody hitting the same lab at the same time and it being full of people waiting in line and then requesting more computers, they're able to see with a couple of clicks when it's free, when it tends to have fewer people in there, and they can kind of on their own make the decision to find a time that's going to better suit their needs and kind of distribute those resources over the course of the day a lot more evenly, automatically. So that's one way that implementing these availability maps can help your user base and also kind of increase efficiency and better distribute the resources you've already purchased. And then one other way you may not know about is remote access. This functionality was added at the start of COVID when campuses and offices were closing down, and customers were looking for a way to provide access to their on-site resources to customers that were working from home on a personal computer or maybe a Chromebook that needed access to their expensive specialized software suites that were only in specific locations. And again, another way to potentially save a lot of time, increase efficiency, is to implement this remote access functionality. So essentially, when I turn this on, I can choose from standard RDP or VNC. We have integrations with other tools such as Guacamole, which is a third-party open source tool that's free to use. That was the most popular. And then No Machine, Splashtop, and I think a couple of others, so that when you actually find an available computer and click to connect to it, from there, that third-party technology will kind of take over and establish the connection between the end user at home and that lab machine so they can use the software products. This has been pretty well fleshed out. So if you have technical concerns, software that's not allowed to be used remotely, automatic logouts for users that have abandoned that session, Those sorts of things are all available in the settings to kind of optimize and customize based on your needs. So if this is something that might be useful in your environment, definitely reach out, check out the documentation on it, and consider implementing that. It's not as common these days because everything's open back up, but it has been helpful for a lot of customers over the last couple of years. All right, that was number 6, and we're gonna move on to integrations. Over the last couple of years in particular, we've added a lot of new integrations. And what we're talking about here in terms of saving time and money is data, moving data around. The ability to get data into our product or get data from our product out into other systems has been one of the top reasons people have been purchasing our product and finding ways to get ROI out of it in the last couple of years in particular. So I'm going to mention a few of those integrations. We're not going to look at them specifically, but we can talk about some of those options. So the first one that's pretty obvious, and I think everybody probably knows about it, is our Active Directory integrations. So some of the options, we've got a number of different ways that we integrate with AD. And the most popular and most common is probably the OU integration. So instead of having to manually create rules and filters to organize your computers or manually drag and drop computers into their divisions, with the OU integration, you just simply connect up AD to your AllSight instance, and when a client computer logs in, it automatically gets moved into the appropriate division. We can also do user authentication through Active Directory integration, and then we can import user details into our product. I'll talk a little bit more about the loaner checkout module and other reasons that you might want to do that. But essentially, our user records within AllSight by default are really just gonna be a username. They're gathered when a user logs into an endpoint machine. We grab the username and create a user record out of it. Well, as our product has expanded, we have had a lot of requests for the ability to add more details about a user. What's their full name, email address, phone number, what department are they in? And there's a very quick and easy way, I'll show you here in a bit, for pulling all those user details into the system. So those are all automatically populated from AD. In addition to Active Directory, we have a number of SSO integrations for that single sign-on. There's one with Google. There's one with Azure AD, Okta. We have a SAML module as well, so that your administrators and other users within your environment that you want to give access to the software, you don't have to create individual accounts and manage all of that internally. Just create groups in that external system and then assign permissions to the group within AllSight. A couple of our newer integrations, Jamf and Intune, are two integrations that allow you to get data from external systems into AllSight. And the big benefit there is our computer records, just as a quick example, are going to include all of the hardware configuration details about a computer that our client can see. It's going to include installed software. This doesn't have any, but typically you're going to be able to get that installed software list. So there's a lot of details we can gather automatically about a machine, but what we don't know are going to be things that might be located on this asset tab. The department, an asset ID, building, room number, who the owner or who a computer is assigned to, who it's managed by. So these kinds of details can come in from Intune or from Jamf to populate additional information here. And then that might be a place that you're using to kind of stage that data to push it out into another system, Team Dynamics or ServiceNow. So the Jamf and Intune integrations can be really helpful for that. Another use case for those integrations is to actually get computers and mobile devices that do not have our client installed into the system for inventory management purposes. So if you install our client on some set of computers out there, those records are going to automatically be created when the client communicates with the server. But if you want to use our product for that inventory management and lifecycle management of the life cycle of your hardware, to include computers, mobile devices, Chromebooks, or any of the devices, any of the other kinds of devices. Actually, I think the Intune and Jamf integrations are only going to import computers and mobile devices, so any kind of iOS or Android device into the system. And those will come into this computers table on the imported tab. But then from there, you've got the the inventory here that you can then use the system to manage that inventory for. So that's getting data in. There's a couple of others I will mention for getting data in. Actually, I'll go ahead and do that now. In the scripts, and this kind of is touching on one of the other tips we're going to give you, but I wanted to show you that there are some here for pulling Dell and Lenovo warranty dates into the system under scripts here. We'll come back here in a minute. But that's another way to kind of use an integration to get data into the system. For the Jamf and Intune integrations, those can also populate warranty dates if those are in those systems. So your Mac devices, for example. What about getting data out of the system? Probably one of the top integrations over the last couple of years has been our Team Dynamics integration. And the reason for that is the accuracy and detail of the data that we're gathering about the hardware. Being able to push that out into your service management tool for your help desk workers and other users managing inventory in an external system, being able to get all these details, especially something like the version of the operating system and the installation date, the installed software lists, getting this data into that system can be extremely helpful with troubleshooting problems and kind of efficiently solving tickets. And so we have an integration with Team Dynamics. We have an integration with ServiceNow. We also have an integration with Jira. But if you're using another tool for service management, we also have our REST API and a lot of very thorough, detailed documentation that can help you get that data into another system as well. And then the only other integration I'll mention at the moment is we have a paper cut integration for getting your printer inventory. So for things like printers, monitors, and other kinds of devices that aren't computers, again, for that inventory management functionality, we do have a paper cut integration for printers. The client will automatically discover monitors and storage drives connected to client computers. And then you can also do an inventory import from a CSV file to get other kinds of equipment in. And then, of course, you can create one by one, we can create devices manually. So that's the integrations that we wanted to talk about today. And so we'll move on now to number 4, which is the idea of automations. So we're going to kind of take a look now at 3 specific kinds of automations that can increase efficiency, kind of reduce the need for your staff to manually make changes within the tool and manually manage things, and kind of overall allow you to save a lot of time within the product. And there's 3 different types I wanted to talk about. The first one is a new feature, and it's called Actions. And this is kind of a automated workflow tool. And I've got a couple of examples here. If you hit this page for the first time, you're not going to see anything pre-built. These are just some examples that we've built over the last couple of months to a few months to kind of show the types of things that you can do here. This one is a rule that basically just says to monitor for changes to RAM size on a computer. And if the RAM size changes, email this email address, a notification email that says the amount RAM in that particular computer, change from this to that, again, in this case, help monitor and make sure you're keeping track of those sorts of changes and are alerted immediately if something does change on a given computer. RAM size is an example that we chose here for this particular computer, but you can monitor pretty much any hardware attribute and then send out an email for changes. There's 4 types of actions that can be taken using one of these automations. One is to send an email. You can call a webhook and a third-party tool, or you can make subsequent changes to computers or devices. And so an example of that would be this retire computer one. This is a good example of how you might tie an integration in with some of these automations. Our Team Dynamics integration, for example, will allow you to set the lifecycle stage of a computer within AllSight based on what it is in TD. So for the most part, our details are going from AllSight into Team Dynamics, but there are a few fields that if you're managing that data externally, you can pull it back in, and lifecycle stage is one of those. So the idea here is, if the lifecycle stage gets set to retired, perhaps in Team Dynamics, to automatically move a computer into the dormant state to free up your seat, free up that license it was holding, and then also move it into a retired division. So you don't have to do as much manual maintenance in the key server if you're doing that sort of thing. There's a similar kind of thing that you can do with an Active Directory script, which I'll talk about, where if you set a computer to disabled in Active Directory, you've got a couple of options with that script of moving it to another division, I think, and setting it to retired. So this is pretty wide open in terms of what you can monitor for, what kinds of events can trigger an action, and if you come up with a creative way of using it, we're always looking for other examples of how this might be used. It's a very powerful tool, and just depending on what your needs are, we've got a lot of options here. The other one I've mentioned already, we came here briefly, is the scripts tab. So these are JavaScripts. This is a library of scripts that we have built and made available. You may know about some of them, but I just wanted to point out a couple of them with this idea of automated actions in mind. We talked about pulling in warranty dates from Dell and Lenovo. We talked about the Jamf and Intune integrations. I mentioned previously importing user details from AD, so I wanted to show you where this is. You just click this box to the left to install it on your local server, and then I can go into the settings and see what some of the options are. Basically what this will do, and I won't go too deep into how to use it at the moment, but basically what this is going to do is pull in additional details about the user, their full name, email address, phone number, those sorts of things, and populate those details within the user records. You can, by default, it's not going to create new records. So it's not going to pull in users that don't already exist within this system. It's going to look for matches and populate details about those matches. But you can target a specific OU. And if you do target a specific OU, it will pull in all of the users from that OU, even if they're not already recorded in the system. And the main reason this was built, again, was for our loaner checkout tool, so that all of those details were available when you went to initiate a checkout for a given user. I think that might be all that I want to mention at the moment. The other one that I had already previously mentioned was the set lifecycle stage from AD. If you turn this on, you can change the lifecycle stage, let's say to retired, and move disabled computers into dormant when a computer gets set to disabled in Active Directory. And then I previously mentioned the Team Dynamics one as well. The other category here when it comes to automations worth mentioning is extras. Not all of these are necessarily automations, but there is an area here that I wanted to make sure I mentioned. I've mentioned a couple of times our loaner checkout module. If you want to go to our homepage and just type in the search bar at the top right, loaner checkout, there's a blog post, there's a video on our tutorials page about this. But this kind of ties in to a number of the items on our list today, including replacing redundant tools. And then another one worth mentioning is this user assets extra. So with this one installed, I can do a lookup for a user and get a list of all the computers that have either been assigned to them or where they were the last user. So again, around this idea of saving money, saving time, having one place that you can go to see all the computers a user is associated with, all the devices that might be associated with them or one of their computers, and any software products that have been assigned to them. This is another area where you can kind of save a lot of time and be a lot more efficient within the tool, using the data that's already there. Okay, that was number 4. So we're getting down to close to the end here. Number 3 is kind of a broader idea or concept here, and that is when you pull all of these things together, and we talk about the integrations to pull data in, the integrations to pull hardware details in, to pull in different types of equipment, to connect other users using the SSO integrations and allow various users to have restricted access based on their roles within the organization. And you get all this data into the system, it really kind of brings up the ability to have one single pane of glass, a single source of truth for all of your IT assets, whether that's computers, mobile devices, other kinds of IT equipment like networking devices and switches, that sort of thing, but also your software as well. There's a reason we call this product AllSight, and that is that it really does provide the ability to zoom out and get that global view of your entire system, but kind of give you X-ray vision as well, where you can see into specific computers. What are they made of? What is the configuration? What software is installed? Who has used them? What software have they used and how much? How much idle time has it been there? What percentage of the time in a given product was that product in the foreground versus the background? The product has it's kind of a blessing and a curse in a sense, the number of features and the amount of data that's been gathered here. A lot of customers I've noticed these days are using it at the most basic level for running those usage reports on software or running those login reports on the labs to try to make sure you can buy the right number of computers during a refresh. The individual features that we have implemented in this tool are great in and of themselves, but the scope that when you step back and look at the full scope of what it allows you to do, the view of your data and your environment that this gives you, when it all comes together, creates so much more efficiency, so much more opportunities, so many more opportunities to identify ways of saving money and time and cutting costs that you can't really look at when it comes to a specific feature or a specific use case. Sort of that global view becomes very important when you really make full use of all the features. And number 2. So I am going to throw a shout out, first of all, to our support department here. I'm going to do that by back out here really quickly and click on this link. If you have not seen our testimonials page on our website, it's funny, it's hilarious. It's also a very long page of things that we have heard customers say over the years. If you have used this tool for any time and had any need to reach out to our support department, compare the speed and quality of the support that we give to other vendors that you might be purchasing software from. And the idea behind this one is, again, saving time. How much time are you spending on hold? How much time are you spending waiting for a response to a support ticket? So this is another area where I think we don't necessarily spend a lot of time bragging about it, but I wanted to point it out just to call your attention to it as a way that for current customers as well as people that might be considering using the product. Have a scroll through here. It's a very common thing that we get to hear, and you can also share yours. I don't know if it automatically publishes it. I think it will send it to us, and then we'll add it to the page. But definitely, if you're interested, feel free and drop us something. Some of these are pretty funny. Another thing, if you are the recipient of emails from Mike Whithouse, you probably know that every year you're entitled to what we call a configuration review call. Not enough of our customers are making use of this. The idea is that we will hop on a call with you. We're not trying to sell you anything new. Hop on a call with you, either share our screen or you can share yours, and we're going to try to help you identify ways that you might be able to make better use, whether it's reorganizing things, cleaning things up in the computers or policies windows, and additionally help you implement and configure features you're not already using. So make use of that. It's a part of your annual maintenance or subscription. And our goal is just to make sure that you get the training and implementation and configuration assistance that you need so you feel comfortable using all the features and can have an opportunity to ask any questions and learn the tool better. If you want to bring the whole team into that sort of thing, just look at new features and how to use them. However, it's most useful to use that time. We're happy to support, and we just want to make sure that you have what you need to use the product. So that was number 2. So what could number 1 possibly be? The number 1 way is a little tongue-in-cheek. If you have purchased AllSight to keep track of a subset of your hardware and you've noticed that the advantage that it gives, you might consider increasing and deploying it across your organization. It's kind of funny, I'm telling you, buy more seats as the number 1 option. It's a little bit of a joke, but at the same time, I'm very serious. We have a site licensing option for higher ed specifically. We offer cloud hosting these days, which is still fairly new, and the ability to kind of deploy this across your network is going to allow you to enhance the use case. And I got one more for you, a bonus way that you can use our product to save money. To kind of counter this one is increase your seat count. Maybe you've discovered after originally purchasing the product that you've reduced your hardware spend, you've reduced the number of computers in your environment. You don't have to necessarily keep renewing for the same account. If you purchased 5,000 seats and now you only have 3,000 computers in your inventory because you used the product and reduced your hardware inventory, by all means, don't renew for that full 5,000, reduce that seat count to what you actually need. So we have gone through the 10 ways that you can use AllSight to save money